Hi, and welcome to another demonstration and use case around the ArcSight Logger 6.0 product that we have available. Now, I'm actually going to dig into a little bit more detail around some of the other capabilities that we have within the Logger solution with regards to some additional processing, receiving of file data, of log data through the use of files, and also the use of a little additional search command that we can use called a transaction. Now, we actually do have the ability to receive data in a number of different ways, and actually we can receive those directly. We can receive it, for example, as syslog. We can receive the data through an ArcSight Smart Connector, so we're processing and parsing the data and adding additional enrichment to that. We could even have onboard processing of the data as well. So, for example, as listed here, we've got a number of UDP receivers. It could be TCP if we wanted to be. In fact, we can even have folders defined where we're receiving the files. We could even also have files that are being received from particular locations. And actually, what we can do, these are disabled, and I literally can just click the relevant button, have it enabled, and have that particular process of receiving the log data, in this case directly, nice and simple. What does that mean? What does it look like? So this is all within Logger, so we're not doing any external processing. This is all actually within the Logger system itself. Of course, this could be local or remote. In this case, it's just a local folder. So in this case, we're actually just getting it from a particular test location for the data. We can actually do some wildcarding on the file name, so we can make sure we can process additional log files based on some sort of timestamp or indicator on the log file itself. We can even define what we're going to do with regards to the process. What is the type? And in fact, actually, there's a whole list of different types that are pre-built within the system as standard. So we've got standard processing for common event format, but also Cisco logs, Microsoft DHCP, Logger, and common ones to do with Blue Coat Proxy and Apache's Apache log web server as well. So the great thing is we can actually define our own on top of that. So we can actually go to the source types and add our own and define them. But in this case, we're actually just going to use that. We need to define some time formats for that, but once it's done, then we actually just receive that log data and process it accordingly. Like I say, the great thing is that we can actually define additional parsers within this to process the data. As you can see here, we can actually do some of that processing to do some of the field mapping. It's actually based on some pretty straightforward, simple regex for doing that. And of course, we can define that as part of a standard process that we've already defined, for example, using the little wizard that has been demonstrated in a previous scenario. So that's all great, but what can we do here, and how can we look at some of the data that's involved in doing this? Now, I jump to the summary just to see where some of my log data is coming from, so we can see where some of this data is coming through what we call these receivers. And we can see at the bottom this mail logs receiver, which we just enabled a minute ago. We've processed something like 15,000 events through that. So I just click on that to actually take me to those logs specifically. So you can actually see here it's looking in and doing a search automatically for the logs that are only received from this receiver. So it's a nice and simple way to eliminate and get down to that kind of data, nice and simple and straightforward. Now, of course, there's a whole set of information here we can display, and we're seeing all the information accordingly. Of course, actually, I can define that down to particular field sets that we're interested in. So actually, I'm interested because I know it's email, it's mail data from a postfix system. So we can actually just look at that relevant data accordingly, so we can see the information. It's relay, it's come from our mail log, and actually what's relevant here is I want to dig into some options here with regards to what we can see here for what we call this QID field here that we've defined and we're parsing data from. So we can see different event messages. There's some QIDs in there. There's lots of different numbers that appear within those. If you've got any understanding of something like postfix, and there's a lot of other systems as well that do this, you can actually pull all this together. So a particular process will generate multiple log messages with regards to how it is processed. So in this case, it's an email message accordingly. So we actually have what we would call a transaction that we're actually seeing, and we can use what we call a transaction operator to allow us to group those log messages into a particular set of a view and events that we want to process on accordingly. Now, what does that mean? So actually some quite clever things we can do in this one. Now, actually, we've got a defined filter that we've already preset and for this demonstration that we can actually just take a quick look at with regards to this. So it is actually available here. So we're looking for mail queue transactions, and there it is. So we select that, load and close, and let's run that search of what's going on. Now there should be plenty of data in there, and we can see what's going on. And hey presto, there's our events, and let me just shuffle that out of the way because we don't need it for the moment. And more importantly, now we can start to see that we have this QID, this transaction. So we can see here the transaction there. We're actually just picking out the QID. What that means is now we're grouping all of these together into a sequence, effectively into the sequence of the events as they occur with this particular matching criteria transaction across these particular log messages. So we can see the order in which these this particular ID for the process has been done and what's actually occurring as part of that process. So of course we now actually have a sophisticated way of bringing that data together in sequence based on a very simple set of processing of the log data. Now, I could actually go in and start doing some charting, some investigation, and some drill down on this particular process. But the idea is just to illustrate a very simple scenario that we can take some log data that's received from a file. We can process that on the logger system itself without any external processing, feed the data in, and then do a transactional process based on that log data on some simple information to indicate and bring all that data into a single transaction for us to search and investigate on accordingly. So, very simple and very short demonstration. So thank you very much for your time.